We've seen BYU recruit quarterbacks at a high level, including a former number one and Jake Heaps. What was he like coming out? Would you say you got a good look at him and valued him right, wrong? Where is he in your mind?
Well, I think he definitely outplayed his ranking. He ended up being a high 3-star. Interestingly, he had kind of a curious recruitment. He dreamed of playing at Utah. His dad was a former Utah player, but at that time, Utah had already made an early run and gotten an early commitment from Jack Tuttle out of San Diego. Jack Tuttle ended up at Utah, was there for the spring semester, spring football, and then left pretty early in the fall camp when it became obvious that Tyler Huntley was going to be their guy. But because of Jack Tuttle in Utah going after him, they never really recruited Zach Wilson. So who does he commit to? Well, probably the best group of 5 school on the West Coast and one of the top 2 or 3 group of 5 schools nationally, Boise State, which has had its share of great quarterback evaluation. But BYU kind of slow played him, kind of waited a little bit. Then towards the end of his really good senior year, BYU offered him. Now, he was an interesting player. We had seen him quite a bit on the 7-on-7 circuit. And that's one of the things with quarterbacks nowadays. There are so many opportunities to see these guys early on the 7-on-7 circuit, at an Elite 11, at an opening or Under Armour regional. And we had seen Zach playing with a number of really good players from his team in Utah, with mostly Utah, Nevada kids. Brandon Huffman, who went to Alabama, Puka Nacua. But Zach Wilson was the guy that comes out with the bandana. You couldn't not notice him. He just had this presence to him. So Boise State looked like they were getting a steal until BYU offered him. He ultimately chose BYU, ended up being a pretty big-time player there at BYU. His junior year was definitely the best of them. I would say his first 2 years, he kind of showed those signs like, we may have underrated him a bit. Then his junior year, I think he emphatically said that, you know what, you guys had me too low.
Well, and what was the knock on him coming out? Because you don't typically develop arm strength. You know, that's God-given. You can see a guy that can throw it through a brick wall when he's 16 years old. But there's other things. Accuracy, height. Did he put on 3 inches? Was he a 5'11" guy at the time? Or, what was the knock on Zach when he was coming through the recruiting process? Because like you said, you got a chance to see him a few times.
Yeah, I mean, it was never really an arm strength issue. He was a good-sized kid. You see his dad. His dad was a former linebacker at Utah, a really good-sized guy himself. That's his brother is a linebacker at BYU. And he's got another younger brother who's a linebacker who's being recruited. So size was never really the issue. The arm strength wasn't the issue. It was more of an accuracy thing. It was more the consistency thing. Mm-hmm. He would have a big throw and follow it up with a throw that you scratch your head at, wondering where it was going to go. So I think he definitely developed far more consistency, really developed as a passer. And the other thing is, too, I think at that time, there was a lot of questions about just how good Corner Canyon really was early on in his recruitment. And I think over the last few years, they've been a top 10 team nationally. They've been a consecutive Utah State champion. Jackson Dart, I think, really flourished largely because that offense utilized his talents. And so Zach was kind of the guy who opened the doors there. It just didn't happen until after him. So there was the questions about the consistency as a passer. He always had that arm. He was a little bit of a gunslinger too, but that was the other worry that, that consistency, he takes too many risks, takes too many chances, obviously kind of was able to kind of fix all that by the 2020 season.
Okay, now you're looking at this. I think he's going to go number 2 overall. I think Trevor Lawrence is going to go 1. That one's pretty obvious. And then there's a little bit of debate about number 2, but I think it's going to be Zach Wilson. If you're sitting there and you need a quarterback, would you feel comfortable taking him that high? Because I know, we get recency bias. We get, some of our biases coming up. I've talked about Sam Darnold in the past, and, I wasn't completely sold on him at San Clemente High School. So that followed me a long time. I was like, man, this is too high for him when we're talking about him being a top 5 pick. What do you think about Zach Wilson? Have you seen enough at BYU to say, forget everything I saw before, this guy's a real deal, or do you still have questions?
I don't really have the questions. And I think somebody tweeted in the last week something really good that, for all the competition level questions that he faced, where the only really talented team he played, or at least the best team he played, was Coastal Carolina, he also didn't have elite talent around him. He had good offensive linemen, good receivers, but not elite talent. And I think he just made BYU that much better. People know that follow me know I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. I've been one for 30-plus years. There's a little bit of a Baker Mayfield thing there in that he kind of has to have that little extra I don't want to call it crazy, but just that confidence to make some of the throws that he makes, to do some of the things that he does, to kind of offset maybe some of the talent around him. Now, Baker obviously had incredible talent around him at Oklahoma, has great receivers for the Browns, but one of the things that I think made Baker so desirable early in that NFL draft that he was drafted number one was that he's got a little bit of a short memory. He's willing to go in there and make a riskier pass because the reward is so great. And I think that's what Zach Wilson was kind of like early in his career until his junior year, where now he didn't have to make the risky pass. He made the high percentage throws. He made it look a lot easier. And so he's a guy that I think his best football is still going to be played against him when he gets drafted, whether it's second, whether it's third, or wherever it may be. He's going to have a lot of talent around him, which is relatively new. Not to knock the BYU receivers, but he's going to be able to throw some real NFL caliber type of guys when he gets to the NFL. And I don't think that's something he's ever really had. So, no, I don't think he's too risky a player. It's not like Darnold, where Darnold had about a year and a half in or a college experience. Zach Wilson's had 3 years of it, where it's not like, this is a guy that's fresh behind the ears who's only played a couple of snaps behind center.
Mm-hmm. And going back to the level of competition, as scouting these guys, what I always said was, I don't worry about the competition so much as long as you're dominating it. Because coming from Georgia, most of the guys you've heard of in Georgia history came from small schools. And Herschel Walker is still Herschel Walker, whether he's at a single A or a 7A school. It doesn't matter.